This is the final and last day of the recalibration interim meetings. It begins today. So we will begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. Co-chair Salazar will lead us in that, and then we'll have the roll call.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mr. Chairman, for the January 23rd, 2026 meeting of the Select Committee on School Finance Recalibration, Senator Beitman.
Here.
Senator Brennan.
Excused?
Senator McEwen.
Excused?
Senator Office.
Here.
Senator Schuler. Representative Andrew.
Here.
Representative Bear.
Here.
Representative Kelly.
Here.
Representative Nyman.
Here.
Representative Yin.
Here.
Co-Chairman Salazar.
Here.
Chairman Heiner.
Here.
You have a quorum.
Thank you very much, Ashley. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for being here. Our agenda today, we're going to recall Dr. Pikus and Dr. Brown for just a few moments, and then we will go through the bill. Tanya and Matt will lead us through that bill, and then we'll finish up with public testimony. At that time, we will work the bill as a committee. If there are any changes, amendments, or additions, we will do it at that time, and then we will vote on it whether we will sponsor it as a committee for the budget session coming up in a couple of weeks. So I'm sure everyone wants to hear what's going to happen with the bill, what the final outcome will be, and we'll get to that as soon as we're finish up with public testimony, give everybody a chance to finish with their testimony. So Dr. Pikus, would you bring your group? Dr. Griffith, welcome. It's a little warmer in California than it is here today, isn't it? Okay, Dr. Brown.
Thank you, Chair. So the question was raised, we talked a bit about yesterday. What do states that don't use multiple years of data for their ADM count, how do they think about protecting, say, smaller districts with declining enrollment? So I went back and looked, and states that, again, don't use more than 1 year of data range in if they provided declining enrollment protection. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 states that do have a provision that triggers somewhere between 3 and 10%. So they put in place a protection if your enrollment from the prior year decreases more than 3 or 10%. They have some different approaches, often just using the prior year or a percentage of the prior year. And those, again, range from the 3, Idaho has 3%, Vermont is 3.5%. So those are on the lower end. Utah, Alaska, and Nevada are around 4 or 5%. Alaska and Nevada are 5%. Maine and Kentucky are 10%. And then naming that separate from places that put protections on loss of funding. So this is loss of student count. For example, Tennessee is another state that caps your loss from year to year in total funding at 5%. So that's a little different than what we're talking about here. That's really a declining enrollment, a protection on the number of students that you can lose year to year. And so again, for example, a state that has a protection at 5%, they say you can lose no more than 5% of students a year. So if your ADM in the current year that you're using for count, which could be prior year, is 95% or less than the year before that, you get 95% of that preceding year. So that's how those generally work.
Very good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any questions for Dr. Brown? Any questions from the committee? Anything else you want to add to that, Dr. Pikus?
Mr. Co-Chair, I guess what I would add is you know, the recommendation in the EB report is the 3-year soft landing. And if you would elect not to do that, I would further recommend that you think about one of these hold harmless provisions, I guess I'd call it, where you minimize the amount of the drop in an individual year, just to help for planning for school districts.
Particularly small.
Yes, as Amanda says, particularly small districts. Mike, is there anything you want to add?
Dr. Griffith?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So the only thing I'd say is when you look at each one of these states, the one thing they have in common with you all is they have a group of very small school districts. And these protections are put in place for those districts. A 5% loss for a large district is very uncommon. A 5% loss for a very small district happens because you can lose a few families if you have 100, 200 student enrollment. And we've seen that in the past. So these protections are there really for the smallest districts. So yeah, when you look at it, Vermont, for instance, the average school district size is less than 300. So they really need these protections. Idaho has the same. They have an awful lot of small districts. So it's something to think about as a protection for your smallest districts.
All right, very good. Thank you. Any other questions? Seeing none, thank you very much. Thank you for being here. We'll now go on to the next item on our agenda is the bill draft. Ms. Hitek and Mr. Wilmarth. Hitrek. Good morning. I'm sure we all would rather be here than out shoveling sidewalks this morning. So the bill, I believe, is 90 some odd pages. Hopefully we don't go through it line by line. You guide us as you see fit, so we understand it.
Members of the committee and Mr. Chairman, my name is Tanya Heidrich. I'm the Operations Administrator for the LSO. I'm also legal counsel to this committee and the other education committees. As requested, I certainly am not going to go through the bill line by line. I don't think that's helpful, and we had discussed not utilizing that approach previously. So I'll just hit some highlights. The bill draft aligns with the October meeting directives and those that were discussed by Mr. Wilmarth yesterday in detail. I would note that this bill, once finalized, will go through a rigorous legal and proofing process. We recognize there are typos. It's 95 pages. Sometimes when you're so close to an issue without a break, it's hard to catch those types of things. We also recognize that there are technical amendments that need to be made to align with some of your policy decisions. Superintendent salaries, for instance, I think there was a shift in that. It was intended to be superintendent salaries limited to 233% of teachers' salaries and benefits, and it's written in the reverse order in this bill draft. Also, we spoke to Director Bach yesterday. We will work diligently with that agency to finalize the health insurance to ensure that participation disrupts both the districts and EGI's operations to the extent possible. We also discussed yesterday a little bit about major maintenance and the restriction on utilizing that money for enhancements. We recognize after conversations with committee members yesterday that is an error in the bill draft. That actually came from all of that language limiting the expenditures came from a bill last year or maybe perhaps the year before, sponsored by Senator Driscoll, and it was our understanding that all of those policy positions were adopted. Easy amendments to make, but wanted to note those up front, so perhaps it limits discussion later. Page 9 through 30 creates 2113-309.1. This outlines from page 2 through 30 the components and resources of the model. Mr. Wilmarth went through those in detail yesterday in his PowerPoint. Page 30 onto the page of the top of 32. This outlines specifies the salaries for each of those positions and the computations that I mentioned before. Page 32 through 33 and onto the and also on the top of page 37, which is later in the bill, discusses the application of the regional cost adjustment. Page 33 specifies the calculation of benefits. And the bottom of page 33 and 34, this specifies the time-limited health insurance for school year 26-27. Later, I'll mention the statute creating a new provision governing that, as well as those statutes that were required to be amended that are already in existence. Page 34 and 35, these are the provisions that govern the application of the external cost adjustment. And unlike years in the past, the components for each of those items is listed out this year for ease of reference of members and future discussions. Page 36 contains a number of policy decisions. It limits the expenditures generated by teachers under the model for expenditure for only instructional purposes. It limits the amount that can be paid to superintendents for their salaries and benefits to 233% of the average teacher salary. I discussed that, though that will be modified. It also specifies that co-located schools will be treated as any other school. On the bottom of page 37 onto 38, as I mentioned, there are two new statutes. This is one of those that governs retirement. It also provides the Department of Education with rulemaking authority to further flesh out the details of that. Page 38 and 40, this is a new statute governing health insurance. And moving on to page 40 through 75, these are amendments to existing statute that are effective July 1st of 2026. There's a second provision after this that modifies statutes effective July 1st of 2027. I'll just mention a few of those items in that 35 pages. Pages 63 through 68 contains the modification to the transportation component. We discussed that extensively yesterday. Reimbursement for bus purchases will be made within the same school year. It also prohibits leasing. Page 68 and 69, these are the modifications to the special education component, which were also discussed yesterday, which requires payment quarterly for out-of-district placements. As districts discussed, those are large expenditures. The top of page 70 through the top of page 72 modifies the CTE supplies and equipment resources to include repair of equipment. Page 72 through 75 amends two statutes to restrict the expenditure of foundation funds on capital construction projects. Currently, that includes expenditure of major maintenance funds on enhancements. We recognize that will need to be amended. Page 75 through the top of page 89. As I mentioned, these are statutes that will come into effect July 1st of 2027. And these pages amend the current health insurance statutes. The remainder of page 89 repeals several statutes that are in conflict with the policy choices and the other provisions in the bill, including repeal of attachment A, which is currently the document that outlines all of the components for the school finance model. In addition, there are two effective dates. I've briefly discussed those, but some of the statutes that are amended will be amended in 2026, and those dealing with health insurance will be amended in 2027. Page 90 through 92, this is the provision discussed yesterday, continuing the operation of the Select Committee through what should be December 31st of 2026. And as Mr. Wilmar specified yesterday, there are a number of policy choices that are extraordinarily complex that you have agreed to study in the next interim. Hence the continuation of this committee. Those include mental health supports, including counselors, nurses, and at-risk pupil support. It includes studying data from Section 331 in 2024 within the budget bill that contains a grant program, school safety and security, including school resource officers, school nutrition, technology, and it also authorizes this committee to introduce legislation as it currently has the ability. And then lastly, like in the bill last year, it requires the Department of Ed, other executive branch agencies, school districts, the Data Advisory Committee to provide information and data as necessary to make those policy decisions. Page 92, Section 8 appropriates $500,000 for the continuation of the committee's work. Page 93 appropriates $14 million for the outstanding obligation for bus purchases. And page 94, subsection B, is a placeholder for health insurance and retirement. That number will be filled in as it's precise. And then finally, page 95 contains the various effective dates. So subject to your question, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee.
Thank you, Ms. Heidrich. I had a hard time putting together a Christmas newsletter, and you put together 95 pages of very detailed bill for over the holidays, so.
Probably also put together a Christmas newsletter.
So thank you. I know this was a monumental task for the entire LSO office. Mr. Wilmarth.
Mr. Chairman and members of the committee, Matt Wilmarth, LSO Senior School Finance Analyst, just a couple kind of high level comments. First, this is a change from the past 20 years where you, as Ms. Heidrich indicated, have an attachment A that is in what we call non-codified law. And you really don't see the components within your statutes. These are now brought into your statutes. And so for amendment purposes in the future, it'll be much easier to track those and make those amendments in the green books. So that's just going to be a change for the legislature in how it operates the components in its statutes. Secondly, yesterday there was a lot of conversation on the investment earnings. I just wanted to draw your attention if the committee wishes to make an amendment on that. It's on page 57, lines 6 and 7. Other than that, Mr. Chairman, I'm happy to address any questions on the technical parts of the bill, or happy to do that later. In terms of the appropriation, we have the 14 million for the buses. We also have a placeholder that would be for retirement, health insurance, or any other increases. Recall your base bill here increases education funding by 12 million. So if you make amendments today that increases the funding, we'll work with Dr. Pikus to ensure what the total cost is. We'll run our estimates on what the state's obligation is of those, and then we'll input the necessary appropriation that will supplement your budget bill. So the amount of funding that will be in this bill is on top of what's contained in your budget bill, which pays the current law. So that the only amount here would be supplemental for the rest of the biennium.
Thank you.
Two additional comments to that. When you do make amendments, it would be beneficial to LSO staff if those were conceptual rather than page and line number. Those will change. I think it will be confusing to the public and perhaps members if you're working page and line numbers. Those are certain to change, and so would not be transparent and easily understood if there are page and line numbers and then those change substantially. You have two competing documents. And then the second is, as Mr. Wilmarth noted, with regard to attachment A, I would also note this approach contained in this bill is much more complicated and much more detailed than it's ever been in prior legislation. Most of the components were fleshed out within the spreadsheet, and that was sort of the document that calculated the resources. And this is, as I said, much more detailed.
Thank you. Thank you for your efforts. Committee, any questions for Mr. Wilmarth or Ms. Heitrich? Senator Rothfuss, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On page 36, the D paragraph, this is the educational instruction silo paragraph. And I just wanted to figure out what the language does and doesn't do a little bit and contemplate whether it should be tweaked. It indicates that all of the FTEs or the funds associated with the FTEs generated in C2 through 10, which are educational instruction categories, shall only be expended by a school district for instructional purposes and shall not be expended or transferred for any other purpose. So that creates that category that we discussed. What would we say is for instructional purposes? And what I'm specifically looking at is we heard a lot of interest in utilization of resources for paraprofessionals. This doesn't explicitly say that it has to be a certified teacher, but obviously everything from C2 to C10, I think, is salaries associated with somebody that's a certificated teacher. So how should we be taking that, and should we perhaps be tweaking it or clarifying?
Mr. Chairman, Senator Rothfuss, that language, as you recall, was specifically provided by this committee in October. I think that's a very fair question. What does that mean? I would encourage you to define it or further refine it. But candidly, we don't know as LSO staff what that policy choice is inclusive of.
Gotcha. So it's hard to say whether a para is an okay or a not okay under the language instructional purposes.
Mr. Chairman, Senator Office. Yeah, and I think sidetrack, if we want to, in the beginning section of the define where we have the definitions, define what
Yeah.
instructional purpose is and say not limited to, only certified teachers. It could include para educators or instructional aides or something of that sort. I think that's appropriate.
Follow
If that's the purpose of the.
if I may, and
Yes.
and I see it as also potentially being interpreted more broadly, which I don't know that I would support for instructional materials or curriculum or other things along those lines. That might be contemplated as instructional purposes, but I don't think that was our intent, was for it to go to those types of materials. So perhaps that's something else we could clarify. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator. That might be a good discussion when we work the bill. Representative Yin.
Mr. Chairman, thank you, Tanya. In the RCA language on page 37, there's a reference, and I think you pointed out that there are probably misreferences in there, but it's a reference to paragraph E31. I don't think there is an E31. There's a C31, and C31 is like utilities or something like that. I think it's supposed to be, is it supposed to be a reference to just the salary section, which is C33, which is, where is it on page 30, page 30, salaries.
Mr. Chairman, Representative Yan, I believe you're looking at page 37, line 8. And I think you're right. I believe it's supposed to reference the salaries.
Which is page 30, line 4.
Correct, Mr. Chairman, in paragraph 32, under subsection C. So just internal reference, we'll correct that to C32.
Good. Representative, follow up? Good catch. Thank you. Any other comments, questions? for staff? Seeing none, thank you very much. And again, thank you for your monumental efforts to put this together. We don't realize how much time went into this because it just magically appeared. Okay, now we will go into public comment. By show of hands, we're in a schoolroom environment. Show of hands, how many would like to provide public testimony today, this morning? So we have quite a few. So there are 4 chairs up here. We'll just start filling the chairs and we'll work through this public testimony. I know some of you have some handouts you would like to reference. After our discussion last night, we will not allow handouts. And the reason is pretty specific. It violates some of our decorum and our rules as a committee that we tried to get this information out publicly 2 weeks prior to the meeting so that the public has a chance to disseminate, to digest and stew upon it. So if you can talk without the handout, that would be beneficial. So, sir, please introduce yourself and.
Mr. Chairman, Kirk Schmidt, I just want to clarify something, give the committee information about Senator Rothfuss's question. There's a school district accounting manual that is required to be used by all school districts. It clearly defines what's instruction, instructional support, general support. If your staff can provide that to you, that will show you where all those definitions are and help in the funding model. So that should clear up a lot of the questions that you may have about the language that's in this bill.
Thank you, Mr. Schmidt. Any questions? Okay, thank you.
Good morning. I'm Mitch Ravelli, Business Manager for Uinta 6 in Lyman. I just wanted to briefly review a couple of the proposed changes and how it might impact what I would call a medium-sized school district in Wyoming. And I know that the committee will contemplate these things and maybe even amend some of these things here shortly. And I would encourage thought into them. First, without any changes to the counselors, I would encourage the committee or the legislature as a whole to look at continuing or expanding the mental health grant that ran last year and this year until that mental health counseling could be resolved through the model. That grant has helped us tremendously in our school district and would like to see that continue until maybe we have the other pieces solved and maybe even expand upon that grant until that is solved. That is one way to help out those school districts through that. Looking at Dr. Pikas's report on page 13 and 18, it talks about the class size change. On page 13 and page 18, it talks about the elective teacher change. With those, it looks like over the past several recalibrations, the same recommendation from Dr. Pikas has happened. And time again, for reasons the legislature knows, the legislature has chosen to choose a Wyoming funding model and to do it the Wyoming way, where the Wyoming legislature has chosen the class size that we have and the elective teachers that we have. Changing that now, after all this time, has radical transformation, especially at the middle school grades for my district and districts my size. Specifically on page 18 of Dr. Pikas's report, where they change the elective teachers in the middle school grades from 33% of core to 20% of core, will have a dramatic effect and probably unintended consequences of removing a lot of the CTE feeder programs that our middle school kids enjoy. It may have effects on our CTE program in the high school as those kids will no longer have the opportunity to be prepared for that. I would advocate that we look at that classroom size proposal and figure out a Wyoming way, something that we know works best in our state, and work towards that and not just take that blanket change. Lastly, this change introduces what I'd like to call a 4th grade funding cliff. In my district, I have a very large 2nd grade class for our average class size. If our ADM does not change, when that 2nd grade class goes to 4th grade, I will stand to lose, without changing one bit of ADM, 1.6 core teachers and a half of an elective teacher for that fourth grade class in the funding model. While we can try and work that around, that cliff now introduces a problem that we have in fact not shrunk, but receive less funding just year to year because of the changes proposed in the model. To combat that, the legislature could look at keeping the fourth and fifth grade classes at their current 16-1 or some balance in between to not introduce that fourth grade cliff. That's all that I have for today. I'd like to echo some of the other comments others have made, and I appreciate those testimonies. I know that you've worked hard on this and we'll likely have quite a bit of discussion and amendments. I'm open to any questions that you'd have about those topics.
Thank you, Mr. Ravelli. Any questions? Representative Yen, please.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. Mr. Ravelli, the mental health grant program, I do recall it. It was in our budget in 2024. Do you know if all $10 million were spent in that program, or is there still money on it that we could just say in the budget, keep it open and keep using it?
Mr. Ravelli.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. From what I understand, it was appropriated 50% last school year and then the remaining 50% this year. That is subject to each school district utilizing it in the capacity that they can. The only money that I would understand that would be left over would be if school districts were not able to utilize it within that time frame. However, it's been distributed to those school districts, and I don't know that there would be a recollection of it. Rather, it's a categorical grant that would roll over to the next year to continue with that mental health support. I'm not familiar enough with the bill that it went beyond the year that we're in right now.
All right. Any other questions? Seeing none, thank you very much for being here.
Thank you.
Long ways from Evanston. Superintendent Chalk, thank you. Welcome.
Good morning. Yes, I'm Teresa Chalk, Superintendent, Lincoln County School District #1. Chairman Heiner, members of the committee, thank you for the opportunity to testify. I wanted to start off real quick, just thanking you last year for the 8.5% ECA and point out that districts are still getting beat up for not giving an 8.5% raise. And I know I can't share this handout, but Ashley does have it, going over 8 years of base model salary compared to Lincoln One's base salary. And just an example, in 24-25, the model base was 40,652. Lincoln One's base was 55,000, 35% higher than what we were given. And then 25-26, with that ECA, the model base went to 44,108. We did do a $500 base increase for 55,500, which is still 26% higher than what we were given. And in Lincoln One, our teachers understand that. So we appreciate that you are trying to close the gap, but districts have and will continue to do the best we can for our teachers because they're the lifeblood of our district, teaching our students. So with that, I want to go on to say that under the current proposal, increased class size assumptions will directly result in a reduction of teaching positions in nearly every Wyoming school district. Teachers testified yesterday that larger class sizes in exchange for a marginal salary increase is not a trade-off that they are interested in or would support. If the model is adopted, reductions in force will occur statewide. In Lincoln County School District #1 alone, we anticipate the potential loss of up to 8 certified teaching positions. Comparable impacts are expected across Wyoming's 48 school districts. Compounding the problem is where the reductions will occur. Districts are still legally required to provide the full basket of educational goods. As a result, staff cuttings will disproportionately impact elementary schools. Districts will be forced to increase class sizes of up to 25 to 30 students at elementary schools to continue to offer the basket of goods. The very years where early literacy, numeracy, and foundational learning are most critical, and where research consistently shows smaller class sizes matter most. Even though you want 1 to 16, in elementary schools, small districts can't do that and still offer the basket of goods. We have to spread that money around to ensure that we're offering everything we need to 9 through 12. I recognize the seriousness of your role in making recommendations on how Wyoming funds its public education system. You are guided by the Wyoming Constitution, Supreme Court precedent, statute, but ultimately you're guided by your own conscience. However, actions matter more than words. Public statements about valuing teachers and ensuring they are paid appropriately are fundamentally inconsistent with supporting a funding model that removes rolling average, replaces a base model salary with a weighted average salary, and eliminates mechanisms that recognize education and experience. Collectively, these changes destabilize district finances across all 48 districts. I respectfully urge the legislature to align its actions with its stated priorities and to provide clear, transparent answers so that Wyoming students and teachers are not the unintended casualties of this recalibration process. Finally, today marks at least 4 days of public testimony. The message has been consistent. Do not mandate statewide participation in the state health insurance plan. Do not eliminate the rolling average. Do not increase class size. The same testimony was presented in October, yet it appeared the directives were drafted before testimony concluded, or the testimony was simply disregarded. With that, I thank you for your time and consideration and stand for questions.
Thank you, Superintendent Chalk. Any questions? Seeing none, thank you very much.
Mr. Chair, Committee, Tristan Green, Money Lady from Albany County 1. I changed my title, you know it. It's just easier to roll off the tongue that way. I'm going to start a little bit differently this morning, and I just want to say that I'm sorry, and I can empathize with all of you, that this is not a fun job. You put time and effort in listening to people and making decisions based on what you think is best, based off what you've heard, trying to do good for our districts. And as Ms. Chalk just stated, we've quite clearly spent the past now 4 days telling you how what you did sucked. I think many of us in the room know all too well how that feels, because we also go through some of the same things where you take a pot of funds and you do your best to try to divvy it up, only to be told that you missed the mark, that you failed, and not on purpose. It's not that you do it on purpose, and if you do, well, that's your bed you gotta lie on. But it's not on purpose, and it feels personal. So I'm sorry that I'm gonna sit before you today and be another one of those people that point out some of the things that I don't like of the decisions that you've made. But I do know how tough it is to sit there. So with that being said, since you graciously gave us the time to voice our opinions, here's my opinion. I think overall, with all the changes, my district's slated to get an extra $577,000. I'm not quite for sure how I'm supposed to do all the good you intend me to do with an extra $577,000 next year without it really hurting. I think that's why there's not a lot of thank yous that have been coming up with the good work that you've done, because some of the other things unintentionally just really harm us. Losing that 3-year rolling average makes me lose 178 students and $2.7 million next year. The benefit of the 3-year rolling average, it was instituted to help us with the ebb and flow of kids, to help to give us time to adjust. This change just rips off the Band-Aid and makes us adjust very quickly. Same with the class sizes. That change means I have to lose 65 staff members. And so those teachers aren't coming up here saying thank you for the 11% or whatever the raise ends up being, because they know more than likely they're going to lose some friends. They're going to have to work harder. They may get more increases based on insurance and all of the changes passed on to them. They realize that with all of these things that you're trying to do to help them, in the end, when you're only allocating an extra $11 million to the entire state, we're going to have some troubles making that happen. It's going to hurt. It sucks. I'm not quite for sure how I'm going to do it. I will do it. I have fought long and hard for the past 2.5 years for my district of trying to right-size ourselves, fix the things, find efficiencies, spend money the way that it should be, and put that to our staff salaries. Am I where we need to be? No. We have more work to do. But I ask that you allow us to do that work and us to make that decision rather than forcing us to do some of these things. I understand that you want us to spend money that you allocate on salaries. That's fair. We should. You're hearing from everybody that teachers need more pay. We are too. So we should make sure that we're doing our best. I think the problem is there's several things that we do that are towards salaries that may not be captured in a way that when you look at that raw data, you're not seeing that picture. You're not seeing that picture with the raw data. So I appreciate you allowing us the time to come up here and explain the content behind that raw data. That not all salaries are captured in the form of salaries and benefits, because when you can't hire that staff, you contract it out. You won't pick that up when you make us take that and move it into a categorical grant. We're going to miss some of those things. I would argue that a student tuition fee should be considered a salary and benefit that we're paying, because we're paying somebody to provide the instruction. That won't be captured in the instructional resource categorical grant. The SROs won't be captured in that. The food service increase that we pay for won't be captured in that. If we funded as the positions needed to be, then I think none of us would be sitting up here saying this today, that it just doesn't quite work. And so I think that it's also hard that it's also hard to see the picking and choosing of what we adopt from PICUS's model and what we don't. I think it doesn't make a lot of sense to us, and it's sending a different picture that you might not want to be painting. That we're going to adopt some of his recommendations, but not all. We're going to be held to certain standards, but not all of them. We either need to go with his recommendations, all of them, and say that we made these decisions based off of evidence, or we need to ditch the fact that we're not going to fund based off of evidence. We're going to fund based off of other restraints. You do have restraints. You have a budget to live within. You can't give us everything we want. It's the same thing that we tell our staff. Can't give you everything you want, even though you're worth it. I frequently have the discussion with people that I'm in the unfortunate position of where I have to remove the human factor out of all of my decisions, because a dollar doesn't care what your current state of mind is. A dollar doesn't care how deserving you are. A dollar only goes as far as the dollar is going to go. There's just no way out of it. You're fighting that battle now. I understand that. So are we. I think that we operate in similar ways, yet criticize how we all operate. We take a pot of funds and allocate it the best way that we think possible. You're sitting up there telling us that we're doing that wrong. Now we get the opportunity to sit here and say how you're allocating the pot of funds is wrong. So I think with the main points that I'd like to ask for your favorable consideration on is sticking with the 3-year rolling average, because it's worked. Sticking with the block grant model, but maybe beefing up some coding so you can get a better picture of really truly what we're all meaning, and somehow figuring out a way to give you the data that really shows what we're sitting up here talking about. I think it's hard for me to go back to my teachers and say that, yeah, Your average salary is now increased, but there's nothing in the model that gives you education and experience. So I can never contemplate another raise after we get you there. In the absence of an ECA, there's no step. There's no thank you for being here for a while. There's no thank you for taking the time to get that extra education to help our students, because the model isn't going to provide any funding for that. And when I'm already running thin and on declining enrollment, I'm never going to have any extra money to do anything for them. That's really hard. In an education institution, we should incentivize being extra educated, and being that high quality teacher that wants to do more good. And we can't do that in the absence of education and experience in the model. So although I appreciate the raise, I ask that maybe we can incorporate some of that back in somehow. Let's tell our teachers that you sticking around with us is important. We value that knowledge. You getting your doctorate degree, your master's degree, we value that knowledge. It's great for our kids. I think it's one thing I also want to point out that I don't think was shared yesterday. With the model under the recommendation, there's nothing keeping that 135% of allowable square footage adjustment for maintenance and operations. That goes back to 115%. So there is a change in that. For my districts, that's about $500,000. So I wonder if we could possibly have consideration of bringing that back in, since we're also going to restrict what funds can be put towards those types of purchases. I think another thing that's a little bit hard for us to see is how we can pass a gun law in 3 months and allow guns in schools for kids, but we need 24 months to determine if we need extra counselors or SROs or extra support staff to address our mental health issues. That's kind of painting a little bit of a different story than what you want. I think I'll quit rambling now. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Green. Any questions? Seeing none, thank you very much. Ashley, do we have any hands up on our Zoom?
There was one. Okay, here we go. Brady Davidson has their hand up.
Okay, would you bring, this is a parent, so bring,
Yep, I've invited them to join the room.
Good morning, Chairman and members of the committee.
good morning.
My name
Please.
is Brady Davidson, and I am a parent of 5 children that attend the Burlington schools in Burlington, Wyoming. And I have lived in the state for the last 3.5 years. We moved originally to Sheridan, Wyoming, and about 3.5 years ago. We lived there for a year, and then my husband's job necessitated a move, and so we have been in Burlington for the last 2.5 years. And moving from out of the state into Wyoming, I was nervous about a lot of things, the weather, the wind, all of that. But one thing I wasn't nervous about, because I had heard from many people, was the excellent quality of education. And I knew coming to Wyoming that my kids would be having small class sizes. They would be having excellent teachers who were getting paid well. And I, have, seen excellent things about scores and, the level of education that is received here in Wyoming. And so having 5 children, I was excited about that, moving to the state. And I have to say that the educational experience that my kids received in Sheridan was amazing. I was amazed by the dedication that the teachers had, by the resources that were allocated. It was amazing. And moving to Burlington, a much smaller school, there are pros and cons, right? Living in a larger district with more people, that my children had a lot of opportunities that they don't have here in Burlington. Being a smaller school, there are trade-offs, but the level of commitment that I've seen from the teachers and the staff and administration at our Burlington schools is remarkable. And I credit that to the emphasis that is placed in Wyoming on education, and I appreciate that. Yesterday, it was noted that Dr. Pikus, he mentioned that he would think that he had a new recommendation for co-located schools such as Burlington. He emphasized the importance of at least having 17 teachers as a minimum for K-12 schools. And I would really like to urge the committee to consider that. Without that change in Burlington, we would lose 10 teachers. That's approximately half of our teaching staff, and we would have only 6 teachers allocated for grades 6 to 12 to cover every subject area. And I just don't think it's possible for our children to receive adequate education with those numbers. And so I would urge the committee to consider Dr. Pikus's recommendation for that. You know, we need adequate staffing to provide an excellent education for our kids that is equitable compared to those, you know, kids in larger districts and the education that we are receiving. And so I appreciate your consideration for that. You know, the school, living in this community, the school is such a large part of the community, and we depend on it. You know, we're a rural farming community, and the school is the heart of our community, and we want to see growth in our community. We want people to come here. We want people to be able to live here and afford to live here, and, you know, grow businesses, and that takes people that are invested in education and that can teach and have the resources that they need. And so anyway, I appreciate your time and your efforts in what you're doing, and that's all I'd like to say.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Davidson. Any questions? Seeing no questions, thank you for participating, and hopefully it's not too cold out there this morning. Okay, back here in the room, I don't know which of you sat down first, so.
All right, good morning, co-chairs. Charles Oskey, Superintendent, Johnson County School District number 1. Going to take a different approach here this morning. I'm just going to throw out some food for thought, and then I'm going to end with attitude of gratitude through this. So per Senator Rothfuss's question over the last couple of days is, we got to keep this with a categorical grant, because where we do in the decisions, you've seen 4 board members come up yesterday and make a statement that, I'm going to be very clear, they hold me accountable for every penny that's spent with the purpose and the things that we do in our community. But when we start looking at taking general fund, and I'm just going to put it at a broad, I think we sometimes come to a focus on enhancements, and we can't spend it on enhancements. I'm just asking that you don't create a bill that we can't do things that we need to do in the major maintenance that doesn't get covered by major maintenance, or some of the equipment that is not funded through that piece. Block grant also funds food service for us and some of these programs that we can't. We always try to put the best people in the right position to do the right things, and just keeping that at local control. I think that's a huge thing. So that's just what I want to emphasize through that process. Next thing I'm going to come to is just an attitude of gratitude. There's a lot of passion on both ends. We heard everything. Doesn't take away from the work that you've done or the work that we're doing on the other end. So I'm very grateful for that. We have people. So what that shows is, in the state of Wyoming, everybody wants what's best for kids, but how do we get there? How do we stay within our means? So hugely grateful for the work you're doing, and for the work that's being done with all my peers and everybody behind me, because there's actually a passion. I'd be more concerned if there was nobody in the room complaining or saying, hey, you didn't do that this way. But that local control is huge. I appreciate the work you're doing. But I also want to come to the point, I think we kind of get the sense of it's all over after today, after you work the bill. It's not over yet. The journey is really just truly beginning. So the next question I'm going to ask is just continue to keep the door open and we collaborate together because everything touches everything in the model. And I think that you come to realize that is when you try to make a direction here, you didn't realize it touched it there. And we just continue to communicate because the last thing I would hate for us to do is to pigeonhole something that really does have a negative impact and just listen to all sides of the story, which is what this process is here today. But if I'm correct, which I'm pretty sure I am, the journey's not over. And so I hope we continue that open communication through the process. So with that, thank you for what you do. Thank you for the peers behind me and everybody that's bringing things to the table. So after today, we'll get to see each other again. So thanks for all your work.
Thank you, Superintendent Oski. Appreciate that because it is really just the beginning. After the opening pitch, the game isn't over. We've got, by my count, about 9 more votes to take after this committee makes our recommendation to go through the entire legislature and the different chambers and the governor. So there's a lot of opportunities for public comment yet. Mr. Farmer, thank you for being here.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Brian Farmer, Wyoming School Boards Association. Mr. Chairman, there are 6 things that I'd like to ask for your consideration on. Some of those were discussed extensively yesterday, so I will not belabor those, but do just want to acknowledge them and move on. The first really was discussed a great deal yesterday, and that's a request that you consider preserving class sizes under the current law. Really, I think the testimony we heard yesterday said that our districts value tier 1 instruction, that's classroom instruction, over tier 2 instruction, which is the support that is offered after that classroom instruction. So preserving the class sizes is really about saying we value teachers in the classroom and how can we continue to make sure that those kiddos are connected with excellent teachers in order to ensure good student outcomes. The second item that I'd like to ask you to consider is preserving the 3-year rolling average on average daily membership. When we have a prior year count, a 1-year look back, we lose the shock absorber in the system. The system can continue to experience dramatic changes. And I appreciate the discussion of earliest this morning when we acknowledge that that is sometimes the most profound for our smallest districts. That when we use a 1-year look back, the percentage change to a single a small district can have much greater impact. And so ask you to consider keeping that as recommended by the consultant. The third request I have for you, Mr. Chairman, really is allowing our locally elected school boards to keep their tools to recruit and retain staff. Yesterday, you heard from a number of school board members from various parts of the state. And it always makes me proud to see these locally elected officials as they wrestle with difficult decisions of how do we make this funding model best fit the needs of our local school district. It's a tough job. It's sometimes a thankless job, sometimes much like yours. That challenge of how do we utilize the resource that makes sense for our local community. And so specifically, when I talk about tools to recruit and retain staff, I'm talking about things like health insurance. Our school districts have talked with their staff. Our boards have made decisions of what does our staff want in terms of the right combination of salary and benefits in order to get the right people in our communities. I'm also talking about things like superintendent salaries. Already this year, we have 5 districts that are seeking new superintendents. There may be more than that, but we've already got 5 districts saying we need a new person to be at our helm. And when they do that, they go out to a market and they say, who can run a district? What are the people qualified? What are the characteristics and qualifications of a person to be the chief administrative officer of our district? And so as they seek those people, there is a national trend that fewer and fewer people want those jobs. I can tell you in Wyoming that we have seen smaller and smaller pools. The number of applicants is shrinking. Fortunately, we did not run into the situation that Montana has, where they've had 0 applicants for some of those positions. We have had districts that it's taken more than one go at it to find that superintendent. So as they're thinking about the market they face, some arbitrary cap isn't the thing that makes sense. It's local officials make the best judgment you can to utilize these resources for your local district. And so I ask you to continue to give them, in their good judgment, that flexibility, their tool to recruit and retain staff. I also think that when we talk about some of these protections for our small districts, we talked yesterday extensively about maintaining the small school, small district sorts of adjustments. Those are things that impact the recruitment and retention of staff. It's very difficult to get somebody to come to some of our smallest communities where housing is limited, where social opportunities may be limited, where someone imagining their future, it can be challenging, but it can also be beautiful. So finding the right person, helping to make the conditions, the working conditions right for that district are things that can help that local school board when they're recruiting and retaining staff. The fourth request I have for you is with regard to the block grant. The consultant said that, hey, this all works because it's a block grant. I would say that historically, it has been viewed that the block grant is a funding formula. What is the necessary resource in order for a district to provide that quality education to our Wyoming students? The spending formula is determined by the local school board. When they set their budget, they look at that pot of resource and they say, how can we take these resources to meet the needs of our local district? And so the legislature has set the funding formula. If the school district has the ability to set the spending formula through the block grant, they can make those adjustments that work for them at the individual level. Mr. Chairman, I was very blessed to work for the Wyoming legislature during the 57th legislature at a time when our state contemplated significant changes to its education model. And in that time, we really struggled with what is the perfect way to source that funding model? How do we source that funding model? And I think the answer when we looked at things like prototypical schools was there is no such thing. The prototypical school provides sufficient resource, but then locally, they distribute that asset to make it work. If one part of the model is not perfect for that district, then that flexibility allows them to make it adjust to fit the circumstance of their local district. That flexibility allows that funding resource to amount to adequate funding for education for the local district. And so I ask you to, again, trust your locally elected school board to allocate that block grant in a way that best meets the needs of their local district. Mr. Chairman, again, the fifth request I have for you is to consider allowing districts to retain earnings on investments. That was discussed in great detail yesterday. I think it was noted that when you looked at the fluctuations, those were primarily due to times where interest rates were favorable. The most recent was kind of this perfect storm, unlikely to ever happen again. You have an infusion of capital through pandemic funds and high interest rates. You'd be crazy not to put that in, but we're already seeing that on a downward trend. As those go away, as interest rates go down, that is no longer the resource that it used to be. It will return to a normal level. The final quest that I have for you is with regard to the regional cost adjustment. Mr. Chairman, if it is the intent of this committee to continue recalibration, my request is that you postpone consideration of the regional cost adjustment until the next interim for further discussion and further study. The point of the regional cost adjustment is to ensure that hiring and retaining personnel, the costs of education be adjusted to ensure that students in high-cost areas like Teton County receive the same quality of education as those in low-cost areas. If we want to get this right, and you're willing to put some other things off, I think that this is not yet quite there. We've had many different takes at this over the 20 years since I first started working with these models. And Mr. Chairman, I think the point on the RCA I want to bring out the most is what's known as a negative adjustment. In this RCA, the rebasing that occurs is what's known as a negative adjustment. This is something that the Supreme Court addressed in the Campbell 4 decision and said that that is not necessary for the regional cost, that we don't have to reduce a district below that statewide average. We don't have to penalize them for being in a low-cost area. The RCA, the purpose of the RCA is to address costs in the high-cost areas. And so I would just ask for consideration. Let's take some more time. Let's make sure we get it right. Let's get it right for Teton County, the highest cost. Let's get it right for Niobrara County, the lowest cost. Let's make sure that it works for all Wyoming districts. With that, Mr. Chairman, I'd be happy to answer any questions. And Mr. Chairman, again, I want to thank all of you for your work on this. The amount of time that you put in is tremendous. The amount of thought that you put in is significant. And so I thank you for that work and look forward to continued conversation.
Thank you, Mr. Farmer. Any questions for Mr. Farmer from the committee? Thank you for your time. Ladies and gentlemen, when we have a potluck lunch and people start going for seconds, it means there's not many more that want to eat. Is that right, Mr. Oskey?
I'm just here to say God is great, and He gave me a great team. As soon as I sat down, I need to come back and apologize, just make sure I'm clear with this piece, with the board and my business manager. I am all for a block grant. So if I had said categorical or misinformed you, we want to say a block grant. So I'm just bringing it back to. It only took 3 seconds when I sat down and we got.
So you want to
redirected.
strike that from the record?
So there you go. So I'm here to, and God is great, got a great team. And so we're here to say that was my whole intent. So if I misinformed you as a committee, I want to apologize for that right now. But I think you got the point clear with where I'm at. So thank you.
You noticed there was no questions when you first said that. All right. Thank you, Mr. Oskey. Go ahead.
Morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. My name is Raymond Redd with Blue Cross Blue Shield of Wyoming. Thank you for giving us some time to come up this morning and talk with you. I just wanted you all to know that we've had clients reach out to us and request that we provide some testimony today. We also understand that the committee is well aware of a lot of the sentiments and feelings about the health insurance piece of this bill. So I want to give my colleague Dirk a minute to introduce himself and give him a chance to talk about some of the things we wanted to raise with the committee today.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. My name is Dirk Dykestel with Blue Cross Blue Shield of Wyoming as well. I want to say thank you all for the hard work that you're doing. Obviously, recalibration is a very complex task of what's going to be in the basket of goods and also how to fund that properly. And as you're going through this, I would strongly urge you to maybe table the health insurance portion of it just so that we understand the effects. What I would say is you've heard testimony so far over the last day, and thank you for the amount of testimony that you are taking. But I've yet to hear anybody testify that this is going to save the state money. So I would strongly encourage everybody to really reconsider whether or not making this move, there's a full amount of information before you to be able to make that informed decision. What you have heard from testimony and what will be the effect is that there will be a lot of small businesses that will no longer have longstanding business contracts, which they have had for several years. Not only that, I also think that it is not without a proper actuarial study as to whether or not you're looking at this from an apples to apples comparison. Right now, you're looking at the state plan, its rates, its claims, and then you're also looking now as to moving a double amount of individuals onto that plan. You're growing it significantly while it is comparing two different risk pools without actually doing the underlying study that should be done. I will also just add one final note to this is that what you have heard also from testimony from the good director Bach yesterday was that this would require at least a $50 million appropriation in addition to the premiums that would be moved over in order to adequately fund the reserves. So culminating that all together, there is no clear path that this is going to save the state money. It does look as though this will require a $50 million appropriation to adequately fund the reserves without any chances or without any, clarity of whether or not this is going to save the state money. So that'll turn it back over to my colleague.
Thank you, Dirk. Mr. Chairman, thank you again for your time today. I do want to say that we've reached out to many of you on the committee and you've been willing to listen to us and hear us out, and we sincerely appreciate that. We know that this is not an easy task for you all. And just to add a little bit of personalness to this, I grew up in Mountain View, Wyoming. UNT County School District number 4 is my hometown. My wife grew up in Lyman, and I spent most of my time in the principal's office when I was in school. I'm not gonna lie about that. But my wife became a school teacher. She doesn't teach currently right now, but we have 4 children in Laramie County School District number 1, and they're in 4 different schools. And I will say that growing up in Mountain View was much different than what my kids' education is like here in Cheyenne. For us, this is the big city, for my wife and I at least. But we've had clients of ours come up and testify, and we've also recognized that others have come up and testified who do not use Blue Cross Blue Shield of Wyoming as their third-party administrator. I think we've had individuals come up here who use United Healthcare. We've had individuals come up here who may use Cigna. And the one thing I would say about moving everyone to the state plan is that Cigna has been administering the state plan for decades. And that would really result in one option, one carrier. And of course, Blue Cross Blue Shield of Wyoming is always willing to work with the state. I know that Cigna has been their provider of third-party administration services for several years again. But I would say that doing something like this will remove the opportunity for these school districts to make their own choice. And I think that choice is important. And as you can see, not everybody chooses the same. And I think that's okay. Competition is good. And if we eliminate that competition, I think that would be bad. And even us as a carrier, we've been providing health insurance and third-party administration services for over 80 years in the state of Wyoming. And we're the only not-for-profit that's situs in the state of Wyoming. We have over 300 employees. And I will say that this type of change will affect our employees. We will probably have to reevaluate what we do because many of our employees work directly with school districts. And the other thing I would say is they do hold us accountable. The school districts that we work for and we administer benefits for, they are constantly questioning us, constantly asking us to make our benefits better, constantly ensuring that the cost is low. Third-party administrative services is much different than health insurance. For us, we're a health insurer, but we also administer third-party benefits for employers, school districts, and others. And there's not a lot of money to be made there. It's like, it's like squeezing blood out of a turnip. It's very difficult. It's a very difficult thing to do, but we do it because we know it's important. And I would say that, anybody that provides third-party administration services can make it look like it's cheaper, and then later it wouldn't be. And so as the EGI had testified, census data on the school districts and all of the people that are in the school districts, not just the employees, but their dependents, retirees, that information is critical in order to determine what the cost to the state would be in bringing all of these employees, dependents, retirees into the state plan. Because not only could it result in an increase to those school districts, but it could also result in an increase to every single state employee who currently has health insurance through the state plan. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. We'll stand for any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Red. Questions? Mr. Red, periodically the state goes out for an RFP to find check for administrators for their insurance program. Would Blue Cross and Blue Shield be interested in responding to an RFP for something like that to administer the state plan in the future?
Mr. Chairman, the state puts out an RFP every 5 years. And as long as I've worked at Blue Cross Blue Shield of Wyoming, which has been over 10 years, we've always put in a bid for the state plan. And we believe that we've offered a very competitive bid at times. We've requested information after the bid decision was made to evaluate that, to determine whether or not we can make it better. Talking with the consultant, I think the consultant was here yesterday from Siegel, trying to understand what we can do to be competitive in that. And we have not been able to secure an opportunity to provide those services to the state for, as I mentioned, decades. But we'll continue to do so, and we'll continue to put our foot in the door for that. And even though the school districts will, the discussion here is that the school districts would become a part of the state plan, that would make this a huge program to administer. And a company like Cigna is bigger than Blue Cross Blue Shield of Wyoming. You hear Blue Cross and you think, big company. Well, we're a very small company. We're the smallest Blue plan in the country, and we're independently owned. But we would do everything we could to assist in that process. But again, we also would like to narrowly tailor the benefits that we provide and the services that we provide to each individual. We try to do that. We've been recently offering level funded programs. I know that Senator McEwen had asked about that yesterday, about different ways that we can help employers. And that's one thing we've started to do to try to help smaller employees and employers. And I guess what I would say, Mr. Chairman, not to go off on a tangent here, but we do recognize that each school district, employer, individual has different needs and different things, different types of employees, different types of individuals that they serve. And so we do find it to be much better to narrowly tailor it to those individuals. But yes, to answer your question, we do plan to bid again. Been working with EGI to understand when that will be coming out. We understand it'll be in the spring, and we will again put our name in the hat for that.
Thank you, Mr. Red. Mr. Distel, thank you. Please.
Hello, Chairman. Hello, Senators and Representatives. I'm Scott Crisp, Superintendent of Teton County School District. I'm just going to take a few minutes, and my goal here is not to get in the weeds with a lot of the data that's already been shared. I just wanted to take the opportunity to address the committee on a few categories that I believe are important to keep in your mindset as you move forward. I just want to begin first by thanking everyone for their time and the clear acknowledgement of the uniquenesses that we face up in the Teton area. So thank you very much for that. I appreciate the time and consideration that everyone's thought through and the acknowledgement of that. I want to talk about the purpose of Wyoming school funding is to ensure that every student, regardless of geography, has access to high educational opportunities. And I emphasize regardless of geography. Equity in Wyoming must reflect fairness based off need and context, not identical treatment across fundamentally different districts. I think everyone would agree one of the reasons we love Wyoming so much is it is the most unique state in the country. As you drive across town to town, engage with different schools, see how schools interact with each other and are tight together. It's one of the things that's made me want to stay in Wyoming my entire career. There was a few years where I went to Oregon to continue my education and back to my home state of South Carolina for a year to assist my family. But at the end of the day, I've been here in Teton County School District since 1998, where I started as a rookie U.S. history teacher. And I love this state. And there was a time too when I was teaching where we had applicants stacked high. We were known to be the state to go to teach and to work in terms of an educator. We recruited teachers from Colorado, Montana, Idaho, Utah. They were knocking on our doors in our schools beyond Teton County in a lot of our districts. And our selection to identify a high quality teacher, which is the most important impact of a kid's education, period, is an effective teacher. It is without a doubt, that's the core of why we're all here today. I do believe moving forward that the focus around this one-size-fits-all model needs to be looked at. A funding model that assumes similar staffing and operating conditions across districts does not reflect the current realities of Wyoming. What once may have worked under different economic conditions may no longer be sufficient today. Wyoming needs transparent, defensible statewide funding structure. That structure must also be flexible to account for regional labor markets, cost of living variation, scale and operational challenges to certain districts. A single formula without meaningful adjustments risks creating inequalities, that equality word that we debate a lot in Wyoming. I do believe that when we talk about recalibration and we're having conversations in our school district currently, and we have been since July, that it does create this anxiety and fear for many of our educators. And it's my role to ensure to our community that this is the beginning of the process. And there's many iterations of this process. And there will be many voices at the table in this process. Teton County welcomes to be part of that process, sit at the table with any decision or idea maker. We are willing to be problem solvers and not bring problems to you. And we will do whatever it takes to advocate for our district and students. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Superintendent. Appreciate that you're carrying that message out there, that this is just the beginning. Any questions? Committee? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Ashley, anyone else have their hands up?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, there are no one username, Jeff and Tian Sampson.
Okay, would you bring them in?
Absolutely, Mr. Chairman. I have invited them to join the room.
Hello?
Yes, we can hear you.
Oh, perfect. Good morning. My name is Jeff Sampson. This is my wife, Tian. We live here in Cali, Wyoming, and we're residents of Bighorn County School District number 1. I previously worked in the district as a transportation director for 10 years, and I've coached basketball here for the last 15 years. My wife's also a substitute teacher in the district. But more importantly, we're parents in the district, and we have 4 kids who have all attended the district, and we have directly been able to see how the diligent care and attention of our amazing teachers and staff have impacted our children and our community. With that being said, my wife is gonna speak for a minute here and speak related to some of the importance of school staffing and how we fund our co-located schools.
Good morning. Thank you for having us. I just want you to understand that Wyoming schools are more than just buildings. They are the heart of our small communities. Families choose to live here because of small schools, small class sizes, and the close relationships between students, teachers, and staff. Our schools are facing large staff reductions, not just minor adjustments. Quality education depends on adequate staffing, not overcrowded classrooms. Fewer staff would mean fewer adults who know students personally, teachers stretched across more classes or subjects, and very difficult to cover all the standards and content areas. Small schools depend on staff flexibility to offer electives and enrichment, career and technical opportunities, and intervention and support for struggling students. When staffing drops sharply, schools are forced to focus only on the bare minimum. So students lose chances to explore interests and prepare for life after graduation. Us rural students deserve the same preparation for their future as students anywhere else. Elective classes are not just extras, they're essential to well-rounded education and career exploration. Preparing students for the future takes teachers and staff. Students need guidance and mentoring and consistent adult support. Large staffing reductions makes it harder to meet different learning needs and support post-secondary planning and maintain stable relationships with trusted adults. Sharing a building does not mean sharing needs. Co-located schools are real schools with differing needs. Different age groups have different schedules, instructional needs, and staffing requirements. Treating separate schools as one may look efficient on paper, but it ignores daily reality. Large staffing losses affects the entire community. When teachers lose jobs in small communities, then those families often have to move, and that leads to fewer students enrolled, fewer customers for our local businesses, and just less community stability. Our school instability makes it harder to recruit and retain quality teachers. Teachers look for stable schools when choosing where to work, even in Wyoming. Large reductions signal uncertainty to potential applicants. So rural schools already are facing hiring challenges, and then instability makes them even worse. Lastly, with all that being said, we as parents appreciate the committee's work and the difficulty of this recalibration, but please understand that many families, including ours, choose to live in a small community specifically because of its strong public schools and the attentive, caring professionals who make them successful. Therefore, we ask you to reconsider how co-located schools are funded and amend this bill for the sake of our communities, our families, our children, and their futures. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. and Mrs. Sampson. Committee, any questions? Thank you for your participation. Appreciate the words.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Ashley, anyone else online?
That's it for now, Mr. Chairman.
All right, thank you. Sir, I'm glad to see you back. You didn't have a chance last night to give your testimony, so appreciate you returning.
Thank you. Thank you. Mr. Co-Chairs, member of the committee.
Would you introduce yourself, please?
Yeah. I'm Mason Magana, and I'm a teacher here in Cheyenne. Wyoming born and raised, graduated from public schools in Rock Springs. I have an associate's from Western, and both a bachelor's and a master's from the University of Wyoming. I'm proud and always have been to call Wyoming home. I'm here today because I've been thinking a lot about the number 43. When I first graduated from UW, I tried to get a job here in Cheyenne. They paid well, they had class sizes averaging 21-1, and they had great leadership. Back then, there were tons of applicants and only a few jobs here in Laramie 1. In the end, I didn't get a job in Cheyenne that first year, and I ended up taking a job down the road about 43 miles south of the border. My department chair that year, she was in her 43rd year of teaching, 43 years. She looked at me on my second day and she was checking in with me. And she asked if everything was going okay. And then she told me, I think you could go 43 years. I laughed at her and I said, no way. Unfortunately, 43 came up again that year though. I had 43 students in a classroom with only 40 desks. I felt guilty some days because I would hope that some kids would be absent just so everybody would have a seat in that classroom. Never mind teaching for 43 years. I was just trying to make it through each day. Fast forward, after a year, I got hired in Wyoming. What drew me again was smaller class sizes and a wage of about $15,000 higher than what I was making in Colorado. That's how you got this Wyoming kid to stay in Wyoming. That's how I knew that I could maybe do this for 43 years. However, now that I look at my former Colorado district's salaries, they have increased about $20,000 on the base. And basically they've caught up with us after years of stagnation. And now this committee is proposing an increase of class sizes and the cutting of elective teachers. I see the exact same situation that ran me out of Colorado, only now it's happening here at home. So now I have a question to ask myself, and it's a pretty tough one. Am I going to make it those 43 years? Serving students, serving my community, and if so, will all 43 of those years be here in Wyoming? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Madonna. Any questions? When you started out with the number 43, I thought this is something related to 6'7".
Oh, no, unfortunately not.
And I was waiting to see where that was going to go. Thank you. I hope you make it to 43 years.
Thank you.
6, 7 may be a little bit further stretch. All right. Good. Ma'am?
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, my name is Lindsay Simoneau with the Wyoming Behavioral Health Alliance. Today, I'm speaking on behalf of all of our members, but specifically the Wyoming School Counselors Association and the Wyoming School Psychology Association. On January 9th, the Alliance presented joint appropriations with a letter addressing our legislative priorities, which included 230 signatures of Wyoming behavioral health professionals across the state. One of those priorities highlighted behavioral health supports for K-12 students. More behavioral health professionals have signed on since then because they recognize that this is a critical need happening in schools across our state. Mental health in K-12 schools has been discussed as a needed support since before COVID. In 2021, Wyoming received SAMHSA grants for the pilot mental health services to roll out in specific counties. In the 2022, 2023, 2024, and 2025 sessions, all had bill drafts designed to provide behavioral health services in schools. The point of my summary is simple. There is no reason to delay the discussion of counselors and support services that benefits Wyoming. You have already heard testimonies from education and mental health professionals highlighting this necessity, so I will not repeat what has already been said. I will answer a question that has been asked this morning. The Department of Ed's grants from SAMHSA, the Federal Substance Abuse and Mental Health Service Administration, are slated to end on September 29th of this year. This deadline is why the legislature has seen various bills addressing student behavioral health in recent years. I would also like to highlight that last week, SAMHSA unexpectedly canceled $2 billion in grant funding across the country. Though it was restored within 36 hours, the situation both highlighted Wyoming's need and that Wyoming may not be able to count on outside help moving forward. It is well known behavioral health is a Wyoming issue and one that Wyoming residents are eager to address. When Wyoming students are discussed, the conversation always seems to turn to the idea of growing our own. Wyoming knows the meaning of this phrase, nurturing our children and students in order to nurture Wyoming's future. Providing students and teachers with the resources they need is the first step in growing our own. Continuing to delay these resources only risks Wyoming's future. And with that, I stand for question.
Thank you very much. Representative Yin, thank you.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. So, Ms. Simoneau, the same question I asked Ms. Petrino yesterday. In the evidence-based model, which is different than what we have in the bill draft right now, do you think that's the right number of counselors and nurses? Or do you think there'd be a different number?
Mr. Chairman, Representative Yin, what the Wyoming School Counselors Association stands by, which is what we also affirm, is the number of 250 students to 1. And I do believe that is not the current number that's in your legislation. That currently we have 300 to 1 that's happening across the state. And so we would stand by that national recommendation of 250 to 1.
Thank you, Ms. Semino. Nice jacket.
Thank you. We're a blue ribbon school. Had to show it off. Thank you, Mr. Chairman and the committee. My name is Stacy Recadal, and I am the art teacher at Linford Elementary, as well as 2 rural schools, Harmony and Centennial in Albany County School District 1. I got my bachelor's from the University of Wyoming, go Pokes, and after teaching in public education down in Denver for a while, I proceeded to get my master's from Columbia University. After living in New York, I knew that I had to move back to good old Wyoming. As we look at the budget, operations, and this proposed recalibration, it's easy to see everything as numbers. Student count, staff ratios, district size, and this does matter when we are looking at these large decisions. However, we cannot forget the people that this impacts. Behind every number is a person, a student, a teacher, and a community. I ask you all to take a moment and think back to your public education. I'm sure that there was one teacher that made an impact. I know I have mine. Was it a PE teacher in elementary school? Was it a science teacher? Was it your kindergarten teacher who got you to read? And I wonder, would that impactful person be cut under this new proposed ratio? At Harmony, that would look like going down to one teacher. One teacher to give a quality education for 6 years through kinder through fifth grade, and the most foundational primary education. One teacher to do the job of many. My students at one of the rural schools, when I was teaching them, I asked them to draw their favorite subject in school. Harmony has not had specialists come out for the past few years. So that's library, music, PE, drawing, or art, all those good things. And this little kiddo, they drew a picture of music where they were learning about Spanish and singing songs in Spanish. And they went back out to their ranch and they were teaching their parents Spanish. Isn't that pretty phenomenal? That is impact. And without that teacher, that experience would not have happened. Programs like music and arts are not extra to these students. Counselors, SROs, support staff, custodians, they are connections to students to help them grow and succeed. The proposed staffing cuts to middle school specials would also be a hindrance to these programs and the students whose one connection to school could be these classes. How can we decide who is more valuable than someone else when the numbers have not been asked? I strongly encourage you to get into your communities, go to schools. Ask the students what they're learning. Ask the students who their favorite teacher is and why. And I also ask you to think about that teacher who made an impact in your life. And if they were one of those teachers cut, would you be sitting here today? Would you be sitting in your position making these choices? Thank you. I'll stand for questions.
Thank you, Ms. Reckill. Senator Ruffus.
I actually don't have a question. I just want to congratulate Linford in front of everybody here for their 2025 Blue Ribbon victory. That is incredible, and that just shows the dedication and quality of the school. We obviously have each year a few Blue Ribbon schools in the state of Wyoming, and we're very proud of it. So congratulations, and thanks for being here. And nice jackets.
Thank you. All right, sir.
Hello, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. My name is Caleb Hansen. I was born in Douglas, Wyoming, grew up in Cheyenne, and spent about a decade back and forth to Laramie. I am a social worker by trade. I have a master's degree from the University of Wyoming, and I started off my education here in Cheyenne at LCCC. I'm currently employed through the K through 12 mental health funding grant that was talked to here by Mrs. Semino. I want to just reiterate or to say that everything she said, I completely agree with. We need more support staff, counselors, social workers in the schools. Currently, my job is through Safe and Drug-Free Schools. So I work with students who are using drugs, alcohol, tobacco, and getting in fights and having behaviors in schools. And this is not like an optional extra. This is something that needs to be in schools in Wyoming. This is something that we have students using substances that need support. And this is all tied into mental health. And this is not an optional, I don't see this as an optional service. Currently, I have two schools that I work at, which is really an unrealistic caseload. One of the schools has right around 1,600 students, and the other one has over 800. If we had two people at the 1,600 school and one person at the 800 school, then that would be a reasonable caseload for this position. Right now, the mental health funding grant is not being renewed, and there's not enough. I talked to the building principals, and with the proposed recalibration, they don't think that there's funding in the school's budget to keep this position. I'm not only providing services to these students who are using drugs, alcohol, tobacco, but I am supporting the other counselors and social workers at these buildings, carrying some of their caseload. So, at the high school where there's 1,600 students, there's one social worker, and that is not a reasonable, that is outrageous. I can't believe how she keeps her head above water. So I just want to really drive home that we need these support staff. This is not an optional extra. And right now, it doesn't look like we are going to get these positions funded. So please, if you see the mental health K through 12 grant come across your desk, or if you are some of the legislators that are being willing to sponsor this, I've been talking to a few, please consider this. And also, even better would be to provide, enough room in the general funds to fund these positions. And that's all that I have to share. So if anyone has any questions, thank you.
Representative Bear, Chairman Bear.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Hanson, thank you for being here today. Can you just describe your caseload a little better for us? What is a typical day or a typical week?
Sure. So what I do primarily is work in small groups and with individual students. And generally, the students that I work with have been in trouble at school for using drugs, alcohol, tobacco at school, or getting into a fight at school. And more so as time goes on and I get to know the populations that I'm serving, because this is only my second year in the position. I'm working with students that are referred to me from counselors that are having other issues, just having a lot of mental health issues that they need help with, anxiety. Like I said, I have a master's in social work, so I'm working with students for all kinds of reasons. I have a grief and loss group that I do with students at both the schools. So I am doing small groups, learning about prevention, about drugs and alcohol and tobacco, mostly vaping when it comes to tobacco. Kids aren't smoking cigarettes anymore. But so my day looks extremely busy back and forth between the two schools. I am seeing Thursday, I saw 21 students. I had 4 different groups and they're small. They're from 3 to 5 students in the groups, and then the rest were individuals. But that was, all day long seeing students. And that was, I always have a running list of if anyone is absent, this is the list that I see. So I am constantly behind in providing these services. And I really believe that consistency is one of the most important things when we work with anyone really, but especially when we're working with students and providing services, we need to be consistent. And it's really difficult to stay consistent when the caseload is unreasonable. So does that answer your question? Yeah.
Mr. Kochek. Thank you. Thank you for being here today. Appreciate it. Can you give me a success story where your position helped a student over a serious crisis?
Yeah, absolutely. So I had a student, so they have had a couple run-ins with law enforcement and been through court, and we're trying to I'm trying to help them successfully complete probation, trying to work on strategies not to use substances and ways to, I think that there's a lot with this student, there's a lot of, underlying issues, right? There's always underlying reasons people do the things that they do, including using substances and treating people in ways that we, don't want to see. So we're always working on strategies to, really work through these underlying issues. The student just successfully completed probation, now has a job, which everyone around them knows that this was like not, this was something that was not expected, has been holding down a steady job. And just the other day, last week, they came up to me and showed me, they have this like counter, it's you put in the date, it's an app on the phone. And they showed me that they had, 7 months and it was like 7 months and a week sober off all substances. And they were very excited to show me this. And, this is a huge, huge win for the student. This is someone I've been working with for the last 2 years. And this happens all the time. And a lot of the students that I work with, sometimes we don't see the immediate impact, right? But that's something that's not necessarily always measurable. I worked with someone in high school. I was in these groups, in these classes, using substances in high school, and I was fortunate enough to be in Wyoming, and they had safe and drug-free schools. And the person that did that in my school, her name was Mrs. Hatfield, and she made a profound impact on my life. And I didn't stop using substances until well after I was out of high school. But the impact that she made, she was the person, like you were talking about, that made the impact and why I'm here today. So I know how important safe and drug-free schools is, and I know how important social workers and counselors are. I don't know. Does that answer your question? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hanson. I don't see any more questions, but I want to thank you for what you're doing. Sometimes you don't see the result on the immediate, but sounds like you're making a lot of good progress with our students.
Thank you.
Okay, Ashley, anyone else online? While we're waiting for the chairs to be filled?
Not right now, Mr. Chairman.
Anyone else? I sense we're starting to wind down, so we'll finish up testimony and then we'll take a break and then start working the bill. So any others that want to come up and provide testimony? Please fill the chairs.
Mr. Chairman, Boyd Brown. I'm the Executive Director for the Wyoming Association of School Administrators. So just wanted to talk a little bit about a few things. I think Brian talked about recruiting and retaining staff. And again, I would reiterate some of the things that I said yesterday about moving everyone to the state insurance plan and remind us that that's probably not a good thing. And you've heard a lot of testimony about that. So I'll leave that there. The next thing I want to talk about is maintaining our small schools. I'm going to tell you that our small districts did a really good job, including Mr. Christensen yesterday. I want to talk to you a little bit about some of our other small schools that are in larger districts. I'm a proud graduate of Midwest Wyoming, go Oilers. So that's a small school in Natrona County. You got Little Snake River in Carbon 1. You got Hannah. You got Encampment. You got Saratoga in Carbon 2. So that's probably a medium-sized district with 3 small schools in it. And most of them are co-located. Again, you got Casey and Johnson. You got Rock River and Albany. You got Hewlett and Crook County. You got Cokeville and Lincoln 2 and Southeast and Goshen. And I guess I want to bring those up. And I think that you guys are probably going to work to solve that problem for small districts, but I want to remind you that there are small schools out there in our larger districts that would have affected that are co-located as well. So just talking a little bit about that. You've not heard from our superintendents about the salary cap. And I think that's because they don't feel like they want to talk about that because it would be self-serving. I'm going to tell you that it feels like it's punitive. I had a handout I was going to give you, but we're not giving out handouts. I'll probably send it out to you. But the American Association of School Administrators does a salary survey every year. And I think they try to do a good job of matching median salaries with what teachers' median salaries are. And I just wanted to go down through that. And I want to tell you that we may have 1 or 2 superintendents who may be a little bit out of whack there. But I would tell you that most of our superintendents are right within the range that they need to be. You've got to remember that we've got superintendents with over 20 years of experience. I think the longest one is 24. I actually asked him specifically. He said, I can't remember whether it's 24 or 26. So it's been in our state as a superintendent for over 20 years. So the AASA salary study for fewer than 300 students, the median superintendent salary across the nation is about $112,500, and the median or the beginning median salary for teachers is $41,000 there, and that's a ratio of 2.73. You look at 300 to 999 students. The median superintendent salary is $132,723, and the median beginning teacher salary is about 44, and that's a ratio of 3.02. 1,000 students to 2,099. Median salary there is $160,000, and the ratio is 3.38 to their beginning teacher salary. From 3,000 to 5,000 students, the median salary there is $192,000. And then if you go from 5,000 from 5,000 to 10,000 students, the median salary is $203,500. And then if you get over 10,000, then we've got a couple of districts in our state that are there. The median salary is $226,885. So again, I just want to let you know that we're not out of whack. When we go out and recruit to bring superintendents in, Brian gave you some information about that. We did have to do multiple searches last year for superintendents. The number of superintendents that have applied has gone down as well. So just want to remind you that I think that trying to use an average salary and a cap, I don't think is a good idea. I think your local school board members will do a good job, and they get provided good guidance on how to take care of that. And I think that there are targets that some boards use to make sure that the superintendent meets those targets to get the money that they get as well. Looking at our city administrators, hospital administrators, and nonprofits, we're not out of line with those. We are out of line with public sector. I remember the CEO of Long and Associates, who does heating and air conditioning, told me one time, he says, Boyd, for the size of organization that you work with and the amount of money that you work with, I wouldn't take that job for $500,000. So I guess that was just some good information for me there. And I would take questions during these because I'm gonna skip around a little bit if there's questions about them. Let's see, what's my next topic? Not sure what the interest in making instruction a siloed block grant. You guys get the Carew report every year, and we are within usually 5% of spending 100% of the salary money for teacher salaries. And you get that every year. You know, I've had that conversation for I don't know how many years with different legislators, and I've been lobbying you guys since the first recalibration. I had Dr. Alan Auden on my dissertation committee, so I'm pretty invested in this. The model is, like we've said, it's a resource funding model. It's not a spending model. You'd have to be perfect to be able to get that. But the Carew report shows that we've done that. Now, each district is a little different. I mean, and I've been in enough to know that sometimes we give out a little more in benefits. Sometimes we do something else. But every district is trying to spend the money that they get for teacher salaries on teacher salaries. And having the flexibility to address issues, especially if we're not going to have the 3-year rolling average, you're going to need the ability to do that sometimes. We have to make decisions by statute right after you guys pass the budget. So we have to make sure that we are close to where we need to be if we need to RIF teachers, cut teachers, whatever we need to do there. So I guess I would say we need to keep that, and your consultant is recommending that you keep it as a block grant. So please do that. Again, it's local control that would be eroded there too. I think you guys had good conversation about recapturing investment earnings yesterday. Again, I think that you would disincentivize school districts to do any work on trying to gain money there, and they don't do that willy-nilly. And again, as interest rates go down, they're going to be less and less interest for them to earn there. So I don't think that that's something that you should do as well. I guess speaking of recruiting and retaining teachers, one of the things that I would say is if you're going to use the regional cost, I would start with the $70,058 that is the average salary. And again, I don't know if that would fix the problem, but reducing it down to the lowest district by a reduction, I don't think is a good idea either for the regional cost adjustment. Oh, let's see. And again, you heard great testimony yesterday. on retaining the class sizes that are in the model. And I think the two teachers that testified yesterday did a great job of talking about tier one instruction and making sure that you have the smallest classes that you can have there. I think you had 2 or 3 superintendents do it as well. But retaining that class size and being able to have proper tier one instruction is important. And with that, I will answer any questions that you have.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. Representative Yen.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. Mr. Brown, the superintendent cap, it's shall not exceed 2 1/3% of the average teacher salary. What does the teacher salary range in a normal school district look like? So could you'd likely have teachers that would be higher paid than the superintendent cap?
Well, I think it kind of depends on how that's interpreted. Does that make sense? I would say it depends on the district as well. And what their salary structure is. It depends on what happens after the recalibration. I guess one of the things that I'm very nervous about is I know that especially Superintendent Curtis from Powell talked to you yesterday. They use a lot of the health insurance money to prop up and increase their salaries. So if they increase their salaries by using that, if you make everybody go to the state pool, they are not going to have that money to do that. And I don't know where they're going to get that money. So I think they may have to restructure their salary schedules. Currently, we have, we have superintendents out there who have contracts. Some of them are 3-5-year contracts. So are they going to have to break those contracts, the school district, for those superintendents with what they're already being paid? So I guess I didn't give you a specific answer, but I think there are issues that may happen based on the recalibration that may have that come into play.
President Biteman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On the salary cap, I see some contradictory arguments here with Washakie saying we have to be uniform and equity based and local control is not an excuse. But then we don't want a salary cap. How does that square with Washakie when we're supposed to be uniform and equitable? And, we have a minimum floor. Do wealthier districts have a greater ability to offer higher superintendent salaries than poorer districts?
Mr. Chairman, Mr. President, I would say that our larger school districts probably have the ability to offer more there because there's a larger responsibility there. When you say our richer districts, I think that we're doing a pretty good job with where we're at with the funding model to try to be as equitable as we can. I think the amount of change that we're looking at this year would be something that would possibly change some of that. But I guess I don't see any district having an advantage over any other district. And I think it's not like our board members don't talk and that they're not responsible for where they're at with each one of their districts. And I think they try to keep close to where other districts are that are their size around them. And then they have to take into account the amount of education and the amount of longevity that their superintendent has had. And most school districts, if they have a good superintendent, they want to keep them. And I think the compensation package helps do that. And I'm not sure we have a floor.
Mr. Chairman, well, the minimum, it's in the model what the minimum pay is for superintendents, correct? Or what the model spits out is what?
There is a model.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, and that's evidence-based, and that's what we're constitutionally required to do. And by setting a cap, how is that hurting student outcomes?
Oh, I'm not going to say that it will or it won't. I think that each board tries to do the best job to hire the leader that's going to bring instructional leadership to their district. And so I would say there is a correlation between having good district leadership and good building leadership to lead districts to have good student outcomes.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Mr. Brown? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chairman Heiner, committee. I want to recognize here, Chase Christensen, Superintendent, Sheridan County number 3. I want to recognize that you've heard a lot of testimony, both today and yesterday, as well as over the course of the last 10 months. And I hesitate to repeat, but there are some issues I think that we brought up 8 or 10 months ago that have not been brought to light in the last couple days, and none of our memories are perfect. So I will be very quick. In the early meetings of this committee, we had teachers, we had paras, we had others, and as well as myself, my earliest testimony to this committee was around teacher salary. And I think that a teaching position within a district, regardless of district, is a full-time position. Our teachers work a full-time job. Your consultant calculated that when a teacher works a full-time job, they should be paid an average of $89,316. That was the information given to you by your consultant. The average teacher in this state should be making $89,316 for a full-time job. And then your consultant arbitrarily said that a teacher doesn't work a full-time job. They work 79% of a job. They took 79% of that and arrived at a number that you have on paper at this point, $70,560. Teachers work a full-time job. They need some of the breaks through the year to be able to properly prepare and properly be ready for students when they come back, because it is an extremely difficult job. I would urge you, I think that it would actually help in many other places in the bill where we're seeing some gaps. Just pay teachers what they're worth. Average salary of $89,316. Thank you.
Thank you, Superintendent Christensen. Seeing no questions, thank you. Ashley, anyone online?
No, Mr. Chairman.
Anyone else in the room who would like to provide testimony? Going once? Don't want to deny anyone the chance to speak. Going twice? I'm not going to hit my gavel, but we're going to take a 15-minute break. We'll reconvene at 10:20, and committee, we will begin working the bill at that point, 10:20. I don't have a recess bell to ring, so that's hopefully bringing everybody back.
The only one I was planning to make at this point is that language, about tariff. But if you need me something.
Apparently, we have some legislators still out on the playground.
It's the gauntlet, sir.
Okay. Okay, committee, it's time to work the bill. What is your pleasure? Okay, moved and seconded by Senator Brennan and Senator Schuler. Any discussion before we, okay. We will, this is a time for working the bill. We can go through page by page, but I think what we will do is open it up to broad strokes. Anything that we want to change, modify, or critique about the bill. We're going to have pretty broad boundaries here, so.
So,
Representative Yen.
yeah, Mr. Chairman, not the perfect bill, right? Like if we just had like a EV model, I would just be fine with most of the things. But the one thing I do need to fix is the RCA. I think we've all seen that Teton County's doesn't fit a regression analysis, which is somewhat how the hedonic wage index is built. And so I would move to amend that we modify the RCA. So I've been working on this. It's kind of complicated, so I'll be very precise with what I'm trying to say. So we have, you would take, right now the RCA is a rebased hedonic wage index. I would say that if your rebased WCLI index exceeds the rebased hedonic wage index by more than 33 percentage points, then the difference of the hedonic wage index plus 33 between that and the rebased WCLI gets added as a modification to the hedonic wage index. And so that would bring your RCA. And so for an example, if your, for Teton County, your rebased WCLI would be at 205. Your rebased hedonic wage index is at 148. That's a difference of 57 points. And so that's greater than 33 points. So every point greater than 33 points, which is 24 points, gets added to 148, and then you end up with an RCA of 172. And so this basically makes it so that modification only happens if any district is above 33 points from their hedonic wage index in WCLI. And it only makes it so they're only the difference between the 33 point cushion. So there's never any cliff effect if Teton County gets down to 34 points different between the hedonic wage and the WCLI, then they only get 1% added to their RCA. So it travels down the closer you get to the hedonic wage index. But because it's so extreme, this puts the RCA at somewhere in between the WCLI and the hedonic wage index. So that's my motion.
Thank you, Representative. So we have a second by Co-Chair Salazar. Do you have an idea what the estimated impact financially that would be?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, that it kind of puts Teton County at around the same as current law with that change at the current WCLI and hedonic wage index. So it's about a $6 million change in the
Okay. Matt, do you have that? Do you need any clarification on that amendment, proposed amendment?
Mr. Chairman, no, I think we understand the concept. We've worked with, at the direction of the committee in October, we've worked with them on multiple iterations, and I think this is well understood on our side.
Okay. Any discussion? Yes, Senator Ruffus.
I'll just note that, I appreciate it. It took a lot of work to do that, but it's clever from the standpoint of not having a cliff effect where I was worried we were going to have a cliff effect. So it is a good long-term strategy that appropriately adjusts for the current situation, but also is forward-looking. So well done.
Yeah, thank you.
And Mr.
Representative
Chairman,
Yin.
just to add on the kind of a clarification of what WCLI we're using, it is a 3-year rolling average based upon the current law. It is based upon the most 6 recent semi-annual indices. So it kind of has a smoothing effect on that as well. And again, under your proposed bill, the hedonic wage index will be updated annually. And so this will be recomputed on an annual basis, just like the WCLI is currently.
Okay,
Mr.
thank
Chairman,
you.
that's my intent.
Okay. And Representative Kelly, if you're out there in La La Land, let us know if you have any question.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, I am paying attention.
Yes, so thank you. We don't want to forget you, even though we can't see you. We want to make sure you're inclusive there. Any other discussion? Sensing none? Question? Do I hear the question on this? Question being called. All those in favor of Representative Yin's proposed amendment to adjust the regional cost adjustment signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion passes. Okay, any others? Senator Schuler.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. One of the areas that I've probably beat the drum on the most this year is making sure our teachers are taken care of, not only with salary, but also class size. And so I would like to make an amendment to modify the bill draft to change the K-12 funding model class size in grades K-3 from 15 to 16 and from 25 in grades 4 through 8 to 22 to 1. And also retain the class sizes of 25 in grades 9 through 12. I think it'll be an estimate, probably statewide impact of about $10 million. It'll be an increase of about 96 teachers. If I thought I could get 21 back with the 4 through 8, I'd go with that route. But you know, we're all about compromise up here, and I think this will help the districts tremendously. It'll help our teachers. I think it'll help our administrators as well. So I hope I have a second, and I guess there'll be lots of
Yes,
discussion
do-
on it.
Seconded by Co-Chair Salazar. Discussion. Any discussion? Do I sense question on this?
Question.
Question being called. All those in favor of Senator Schuler's recommendation, proposed amendment for class size modification to the draft bill, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, thank you, Senator Schuler. Any other changes? Speaker, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I too would like to make an amendment here to, or a modification to our draft. It has not fallen on deaf ears, and there's no question that in my district, it is very important on the co-location of the schools. So I do believe we need to change that to address some losses in people on the ground and help us to be able to keep providing what we needed to provide previously. So if I could get LSO to please modify the bill draft to have the K-12 funding model allocate the minimum teachers to 6 elementary, 7 in the middle, and 9 in the high school in each grade band, and prorate below these levels for grade bands less than 50 ADM. And according to what the discussion, and we talked about it previous, that's gonna, an estimated statewide impact about 20.6 million increase of 198 teachers.
Second that.
Thank you, Speaker Nyman, and seconded by Co-Chair Salazar. Any discussion about this proposed amendment? Okay, sensing question being called. All those in favor of Speaker Nyman's proposed amendment to increase the minimum teachers for schools with more than 50 ADM signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right. Congratulations, Speaker Nyman. Any other changes?
Mr. Chairman.
Representative Andrew.
Mr. Chairman, as we know, we changed the 3-year look back for calculation of ADM to a 1-year look back. And I would move that we limit the maximum reduction of students to 5% from the previous year.
Do I hear a second for this proposed amendment? Seconded by President Beitman. Any discussion? So that is to put a limit, the maximum reduction to 5% from the previous year, ADMs. Any discussion? All those in favor of Representative Andrews' proposed amendment for average daily membership signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, congratulations, Representative Andrew. Anything else?
Mr. Chairman.
President Beitman.
Oh, thank you. Conceptual amendment here for LSO to modify our bill draft. We've heard a lot about nurses and counselors and pupil support. We are going to study this in the interim because it is a big lift for us. I think it's wise that they'll put it in the bill draft to show as a placeholder, to show that we are serious about this. So I would propose we fund it at the EB model recommendations beginning school year 27-28, unless further acted upon by the legislature. So if we hear something in our interim studies that dictates or mandates that we make a change from this course, we can do so. And then you have all that, Matt, or do you need some more clarification?
Mr. Chairman, I understand it, and I was just talking in the break with a member, and I think they had an idea on the current mental health grants, and I don't know if somebody wanted to bring a motion on that as well, along with this, or make a
Representative
separate
Bear?
motion.
Yeah, if the bringer finds this friendly, I'd like to extend the mental health grant for 1 year at $5 million as part of this particular act.
So
Yeah,
you
we
find
can
that
do
as favorable? Okay. So we have a proposed draft amendment to include the nurses, elementary counselors, and pupil support in the, as recommended by the EB model for the year 2027, 2028, and to extend our counseling, mental counseling, mental health grant by 1 year in the interim. Do I have a second for that amendment? Seconded by Speaker Nyman. Discussion. All those in favor of that proposed amendment signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, thank you. Anyone else? Representative Bear.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As I look at the fiscal forecast and how this particular bill is going to impact that, we don't often forecast how an ECA or a recalibration is going to affect our finances, but I've been looking at it and asking our staff to forecast that out. And we have a cliff that we're looking towards. We are really looking at deficit spending. There's some things that could change that. We could have great returns on our investments. We could have increases in the price of oil and gas and coal. But those are coulds, and it could go the other way on those types of things as well. So right now, with this with this recalibration, as it sits right now, plus ECAs, moderate ECAs over the next couple of years, in the next 42 months, we're looking at a pretty significant deficit. My calculations have us at almost $800 million deficit in the second biennium. So to mitigate some of that, I would like to go back to the original court decision on ECAs, which was recommended that we do them at least biennially. And I would point to the fact that we've kind of done this for the school districts as well, where we're going to go ahead and fund their 100% reimbursement for special education and transportation on a monthly basis. It helps with their cash flow. Well, this will help with the state's cash flow, if you will, and it really has to do with the time value of money. So I would like to do a theoretical amendment to change from annual ECAs to biennial ECAs. It'll also help us coordinate with our budgeting. So that's my motion.
Seconded by the other appropriator in the room, our co-chair Salazar. Discussions. Yes, Senator Office.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. I have concerns about this motion, and I think the biggest concern comes from the experience that I think many of us have had, where we have had some economic challenging times and haven't had as good of times as we have right now, where we have some funds available. And when we've faced the ECA, 5, 6, 7 years ago, the discussion was, well, we can't afford it quite this year. Maybe we'll just do it for 1 year in the legislature. And so we cut it in half. We reduced the ECA a little bit for that year. And knowing at the time that it's the wrong thing to do, but we've got to free up some cash. We need better cash flow. And what matters today is our budget today. So maybe that seems like a good idea at the time, but what ends up happening is the next year we come back and we've got an ECA and we have to make up the entire difference. So instead of it being 3%, we'd come back and it would be 6% that we've got to make up. Well, the legislature didn't particularly like 3% the last time it had to argue about it. And it's more about politics a lot of the time than it is about, do we have the funds available? It's about, how am I going to cast my vote? What can I take home? What can I tell my people? So then the 6% gets scaled back. And then we end up where we are now, where we had enough years consecutively where we couldn't make up that gap, that we struggled and ended up in unconstitutional territory. In recent years, we've actually had the foresight to make up for a lot of that. And the 8.5% for salaries, for example, was us trying to finally put a patch over all of the sins of the past and made ourselves up. So my concern is, even if the biennial over the long term ends up covering the inflation in theory, it's so much more politically challenging, particularly with the House having to be elected every couple of years, that I don't think we do it. That's one consideration. And then the other is just the fundamental idea, Mr. Chairman, that if we should pay for something today, if it's the right thing to do to pay for it today, it's our responsibility to pay for it today, not to make the bottom line look better, but to actually make the hard choices and pay the costs of doing business and teaching and educating in the state of Wyoming. It's the right thing to do today, even if financially it looks better to do it tomorrow. So, I want to make sure that we're always keeping that in mind and keeping up with our required payments and recognize that we have in statute right now this process for an annual ECA, and I think it's the right process. So I'll be on and against this motion. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator. President Beitman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I understand my good friend's cynicism. It's probably well rewarded for, you're a veteran of this body. You've been in here a lot longer than I have, and most of us on this committee, but I would push back against, punishing us from the sins of our fathers or forefathers in this case. There's new leadership now. And I think you have to trust the new leadership that we've shown through this process. We're going to have a recalibration bill for the first time in a long time. We've taken this duty very seriously. We need to trust our appropriators that we're going to put this money aside into hopefully the LISRA or something more liquid than permanent savings, that we have one last big surplus that we can manage effectively and thoughtfully. Instead of locking that money up in permanent savings, maybe we can look ahead a couple of years or a couple biennia and see, like Representative Bear said, Chairman Bear, we've got a cliff coming. So I think there's a new sheriff in town, and I think, we can do this the right way. This is a good, smart cash flow idea. Just like we're giving grace to the districts on cash flow for their special ed, I would hope that they would extend us that grace with the biennializing the ECA, so we can use some of that investment earnings to offset the costs. So I support this. I think it's a good idea, and I congratulate the Appropriations Chairman for bringing this to our attention. Thank you.
Thank you, President.
Mr. Chairman?
Oh, yes. Representative Kelly.
Yes, thank you. It's much harder to see me like this.
I would have to say that considering education is a constitutional mandate, if we're looking for any type of a belt tightening to do during a rough season, that this is not the place to do it, that the courts have told us that over and over again, that while I am probably the most vociferous critic of the courts trying to dictate to the legislature what education is, they do have a strong role in saying if we are funding it properly. So if we were to hit a budget crunch, should be the last place we look. And that's the only reason I would be against this change.
All right, thank you, Representative Kelly. Chairman Bear.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. All good points. I will reiterate what the good president said, that we've changed. Things are changing. We have a few years where we had a 4.25% ECA, 3.87% ECA, and just last year an 8.5% ECA, showing that as the legislature has become more fiscally conservative, it's this funding of education that has become the highest priority. And I've said it many times since we've done what has been characterized as draconian cuts to the state budget in this budget session thus far in our work in JAC. The reason is we want to make sure that this funding model is well funded. So we're prioritizing this, and I think we should get a little credit for that when it comes to how we operate our cash flow. So this is really the right thing to do as far as ensuring the state's fiscally responsible. I agree with Senator Rothfuss. There's risk. There's risk in everything we do. And if you just look at past behavior, he's right. This is even riskier. But I do believe that your JAC has made a tremendous effort to ensure that the funds are going to be available in 42 months. And I think this is the right thing to do. Thank you.
Any other comments? Seeing none, all those in favor of Chairman Bear's proposed amendment to change the ECA external cost adjustment from annual to biannual signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed?
No.
No.
That motion passes. Any others?
Mr. Chairman, I have one.
Yes, Representative Kelly, please.
This has been no secret in and out of meetings where I stand on this. But it has to be brought up by somebody because it's been brought up by people all over the state. I have been a critic of fixing something I don't think is broken. And in this case, I think the choice of health insurance is not a broken system. It's there's the potential for the state to save money here, but I've been a proponent of recruiting and retaining excellent talent in education, and benefits are part of that. And from what I've heard from not just administrators, but actual teachers, that they are very unsure about the state program. And I don't see the promised benefit financially for the state and for everyone overall. It might be better, it might not be, but we currently have a system that is working. So I propose that we strike from the bill the proposal to round up all the teachers into the state healthcare program.
Okay, do we have a second? Do we have a second? That motion dies for lack of a second. Thank you, Representative Kelly. Any others? Any other changes? Senator Rothfuss, please.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. I do think on health insurance, though, that we need information and we need to understand better. There is a delayed effective date in the bill for that conversion, and I think we have runway ahead to appropriately investigate. So I would move that we get additional data, and with regard to health insurance, I'd move that we direct school districts to submit data to EGI so that EGI can start to forecast rates with K-12 school districts joining the state plan. Direct school districts to identify when they may join the state plan upon the current plan's expiration date. So understand what they currently have contracted. Allow LSO to work with ANI and EGI to establish necessary staffing and loans to cash flow the initial wave of districts joining the state plan on or before July 1st, 2027. So, Mr. Chairman, basically, let's do a lot of investigation and understand a lot better before we pull the trigger on this. We've heard a lot of concerns, and I think those are valid concerns that we should be listening to. But we've got time ahead, and we will continue this committee, so this committee will be able to remain apprised of that and understand whether it's the right choice moving forward. So that's my motion to gather that information.
Do I have a seconded by Chairman Bear? Okay. Any discussion on health insurance data and gathering from about health insurance as proposed by Senator Rothfuss? Senator Schuler.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I know there's been a lot of discussion on uncertainty on the health insurance, and I kind of agree in a roundabout fashion with Representative Kelly in some respects. I guess what I'm asking is if we get that information from ANI and EGI and find out that actuarially this is going to tip the whole system, can we amend the bill before it even gets to the House, or amend it after we get, based on that information? That's my thought.
This is a living document until it's, yes.
Thank you.
Representative Yin.
Mr. Chairman, I think when it comes to, Representative Kelly's thoughts on the whole health insurance issue as well, I've heard people be afraid of what might happen, and I get it. It's based on a lot of uncertainty, and I think it is incumbent upon us to be good leaders, to also educate the public on what we think the benefits of the plan change is, as well as for members and teachers to be able to see, what will their health insurance look like when we make this transition. So hopefully we'll have that before it gets in place. But I do want to make the commitment that, I don't want us to step into the unknown completely in the dark, because I think that there is a lot of fear among uncertainty, but I think we can also work on quashing that uncertainty with some data gathering.
Good points. Question being called. All those in favor of Senator Rothfuss's motion for proposed amendment signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Representative Bear.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I made a comment during my motion that, there's this fiscal concern, and I just wanted the public to know that I've asked Ms. Phillips to put that on our website, that forecast with the ECAs and the recalibration included. And it's a worst case scenario at this point, I believe, as far as that cliff. So people can see that there is really a concern. We heard testimony over the last couple of days, hey, we've got a lot of money. And I just want people to understand, we might have a lot of money today, but that's not what it's going to happen if we continue down the current path without doing something about it. So I just want the public to be aware that we're going to put that on the website for them to see. Thank you.
Thank you. That's why we have watchtowers, is to look out over the horizon, see what's coming, so we can prepare for that. Senator Rothfuss.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. I have two more. The first is related to investment earnings. Right now, as the bill is drafted, all of those investment earnings are counted as local resources. And I would move to amend that so that 50% of investment earnings would be local resources, to provide that incentive that we discussed, so that it's in the interest of the school district to provide that investment, but the state effectively gets half.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Seconded by Senator Schuler. Discussion. This is for investment earnings. Proposed amendment would reduce the amount that the state retains by half, so it'd be a 50-50 share on a partnership basis. Yep. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, Senator Rothfuss, your second one.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And this gets back to the earlier discussion on page 36, the paragraph D, where we talk about the restricted silo for instructional support. And my motion would be to amend the bill by providing a definition of instructional purposes, which we see on line 5, to clarify, for example, that paras would be allowed, and also that make sure that we're including other instructional practices where you often have districts that are paying on a simple contract basis for certain instruction that's taking place in their classroom. So ensure that instructional purposes is appropriately reflecting what it's supposed to appropriate or what it's supposed to reflect, but also excluding things that are not to be included. This is not materials and supplies, for example. So provide a definition that clarifies what instructional purposes is so that it addresses the concerns that we've heard.
Okay, seconded by Speaker Nyman. Any discussion on that proposed amendment? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, Co-Chairman Salazar.
I would propose on the external cost adjustment, rather than review and recommend the ECAs annually and in between recalibrations that the, okay, I'm sorry, where, which one?
Mr. Chairman,
I think we did that. Okay. You want to recognize?
Representative
Yeah.
Yen.
I mean, Mr. Chairman, I think I understand what the good appropriator wants to do, but if he wants to do it, I'm happy to do it.
Let him go.
So, Mr. Chairman, there's a placeholder value in page 94 that's the amount of money that gets appropriated from school foundation program. Just a motion to give staff the latitude to figure out what that number is supposed to be, especially given the many amendments that we made today.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Thank you.
Seconded by Co-Chairman Salazar. Yes.
And
Senator-
probably as a friendly amendment to give staff quite a bit of latitude, in fact, to to conform this bill and make it work as it's supposed to.
Pat?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. There's two other items I think that's been brought up in the past couple days of testimony. One is with regards to the major maintenance. I don't know if that was part of the committee's initial directives in October. We had stuck it in there. The concept is under current law, up to 10% of their major maintenance allocations can be utilized for projects that aren't within their facility plan and to maintain enhancements. Maintenance of enhancements is stricken in this bill and it's prohibited. I don't know if that was the intent of the committee in October, so maybe some clarification on that. The second item is with regards to the superintendent limitation. If the committee wants to amend this language, we understand the technical correction at 233%, but I think we need some clarity on what that value is. Is it the superintendent salary and benefits compared to the teacher's salary and benefits, or a combination of their? If we can get some clarity on that, we'd appreciate it.
Okay, thank you. Chairman Bear.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would move that we amend the.
Mr. Chairman, you have a motion on the table.
So yeah, let's dispose of the motion to
Yes.
give staff the latitude to fix that number and just go through and make mistake corrections. I mean, we've noted a couple of the just
Right.
referential corrections, but give them some latitude to make some corrections that don't deviate from the intent.
So the motion on the, this is a motion on the floor. Do you
Yeah, I'm
want?
going to talk to the motion on the floor. I just
Okay.
want to make sure that
Okay, Chairman
we're
Bear.
giving a lot of latitude to the staff. That's great. Just want to make sure the appropriators are, as soon as you have a number that we know.
Okay. Any other discussion on this motion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, Chairman Bear.
I move that per Matt's suggestion, that we clarify the language about the restrictions on superintendents, and that it should be the superintendent's full salary and benefit package compared to the average teacher salary.
Salary only or salary?
Salary only.
Salary only. Any second? I'll second that.
Second.
Okay, seconded by Senator McCune.
So-
Yes. We'll start with Senator Ruffus. Senator Ruffus, you go first.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You know, as we've talked about this and as I've thought about it, it does seem like the appropriate basis of comparison is total compensation versus total compensation. The average changes that. I think we originally at one point talked about it as the starting salary, but total compensation versus total compensation for the average seems appropriate to me. The other consideration is it is important to realize that a superintendent position is an annual position, and we're only funding teachers at 0.79. So that creates a bit of an apples to oranges type comparison also. We had some discussion about whether that 0.79 is correct, and you know, I think at least 0.85 is probably correct, but that's a whole side conversation. Getting back to the superintendents, I think at least we should be total compensation to total compensation as appropriate. Otherwise, that might even be tempting to try and find ways to you're providing an incentive, although I don't know that anyone would take the incentive, but you are actually providing an incentive to diminish benefits and increase salary. I don't think we want to do anything like that. So I would suggest compensation to compensation as the clarifying agent.
Okay, thank you. Representative Yin.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I think trying to compare an apple to an apple plus the rest of the fruit basket makes it quite difficult both for transparency's sake and for us even, right? I mean, insurance is going to be some amount of an average salary is total compensation, and that's going to be, I don't know, maybe 7%. And so you're saying an additional 14% reduction in the total compensation of the administrator at that point. Why not just make the comparison as a percentage of total compensation to total compensation? So you would reduce that to 2x, 2 1/3 number rather than try to make this total compensation versus salary number. So from the mover, I would love to hear why we wouldn't just change that number.
Chairman Bear.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First of all, I'd say, you know, there's room to make some adjustments here, and I would accept some of these ideas. The concern I have is that if we're just applying a 2.33% factor to the teacher's salary and benefits, there's a lot of things that we may not be capturing in there, because the benefit package for a superintendent is vastly different than a benefit package for a teacher. And so the 2.33 factor might be reasonable. I'm not sure that it is. I think that we're going to see a lot of things added into that package for the superintendent that we probably didn't really intend to see in there. So I would say I would entertain the apples to apples and do the teacher plus benefits as the comparison. But I think we need to tighten the language up on the superintendent side of it then, so that it's the standard package, and then ancillary, any of those ancillary things have maybe a tighter restriction than 2.3.
Senator Ruffus.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. You know, I understand that intent. I think on the superintendent side, trying to make sure that all compensation is captured is the intent, and I think that's fair and appropriate. I think total compensation as the language might be the way to go, but maybe that's something we can give some flexibility to staff on what the right language is to capture total compensation. I think that's the intent, is to compare total compensation versus total compensation, but maybe a little flexibility to figure out if there's anything missing in total compensation. You know, if the luxury house on the hill counts or not.
So, Chairman Bear, do you see that as a friendly amendment?
I do. I think
Total compensation.
if that language will work, I think it's much better. Total compensation to total compensation. I think by saying salary plus benefits, we've kind of complicated it. So.
Any other conversation about that? So the amendment to the amendment is that the
I'll second that amendment.
total compensation of superintendents to average teacher salary is
Total compensation.
average teacher's total compensation is 2.33. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. No, that was it. What about major maintenance? Anybody want to? Yes, Senator.
And yeah, on the major maintenance, I didn't even think we did what we did in the bill draft because it wasn't what we talked about before. So I do think we need a motion. I'll make that motion to amend it to reverse that language that talks about eliminating the use of the 10% major maintenance for enhancements. That, as Ms. Heitrick pointed out, came from a previous bill draft that was being used for, because it was a similar intent for this language. And I think it just got captured and put in, but it's a substantive policy and it's a very significant policy. We talk about it all the time on School Facilities Committee, and it's not what we want to do right now. So I would just make the motion to reverse that. I think our staff knows exactly what needs to be reversed to change that.
All right, motion seconded by Speaker Nyman. Conversation. All those in favor of Senator Rothfuss's motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, any other conversation, changes, amendments? Committee? Question on the bill, question being called. All those in favor of, yes, it will be a roll call. All those that are in favor of bill draft, I've got to get the number here, 26 LSO 0161, working draft .2 as amended. Roll call vote. Ashley.
Mr. Chairman, to sponsor 26 LSO 161 K-12 Public School Finance as amended for the 2026 budget session, Senator Beitman. Senator Brennan.
Aye.
Senator McEwen.
Aye.
Senator Rothfuss. Senator Schuler. Representative Andrew.
Aye.
Representative Bear.
Aye.
Representative Kelly.
Aye.
Representative Nyman.
Aye.
Representative Yin.
Aye.
Co-Chairman Salazar.
Aye.
Chairman Heiner.
Aye.
That is 12 ayes.
All right, so that motion passed unanimously. This will move as a committee-sponsored bill to the legislature here in a few weeks.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
could we get staff to maybe run an estimate and so the public knows of how much we've changed in those amendments? Because
Yes,
it's significant.
I'm sure the fiscal note will be updated as soon as we can, and these changes will be worked, Co-Chair Salazar and I will work with LSO to get these changes drafted and then get those out as quickly as possible for everyone to see the final bill draft.
Mr. Chairman, and I'll work with the chairman. My intent's to work with Dr. Pikus to, and his team to come to an agreement on a model number with these amendments incorporated. I anticipate at your discretion that we post an updated model version on the LSO website. The process to update the bill will likely take longer than incorporating those amendments into the funding model, so that we can put that on our website. We can send out a press release on your behalf as well, if that's what you want to do, just so everybody's aware of what that impact is. And we can be as descriptive as you want. We can compare it to current law by district. We can do it a statewide, whatever your direction is. So I anticipate next week we can get that updated on our website.
Thank you, Matt.
That will be different than the fiscal note. The fiscal note looks at both sides of the ledger. It looks at a revenue decrease and an expenditure increase, which equates the total increase. The fiscal note I'll do my best to incorporate what the total impact is, but when you see the revenue and expenditures, you kind of have to look at both sides of that.
Okay, thank you. Any other conversation? Co-Chair Salazar, will you
Thank you,
close
Ms.
us out, please?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Co-Chair. First of all, I want to thank our staff, LSO, who've done an incredible job. Just amazing. Secondly, we want a recalibration bill. This isn't by luck that we had a unanimous vote today to have a bipartisan bill on recalibration. We did a lot of work. We did a lot of work, not only through the summer and the fall, but now we had a lot of individual discussions. There was a lot of give and take. There was compromise. And I so appreciate working on a bipartisan effort to have a unanimous vote today. The battle for getting this across the finish line has only begun. But I think this committee can say that we have heard from the public, from public comments. We are integrating those comments into this bill. And again, I just want to thank everyone on this committee for being flexible, not relinquishing your strong beliefs, but at the same time having a bipartisan bill that this will go to the full state legislature in a few weeks. And I want to thank my co-chairman for his leadership as well. And so, thank you, Mr. Co-Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Co-Chair. And I echo everything that you've said. And I will also thank the school districts for their participation. You've hung out here with us for most of the summer. I know it's been a cloud over your summer, or you've been concerned what's going to happen. But I appreciate your input. We have heard your input, and hopefully we can come out with something that's going to be a win-win for everyone. There's some give and take on both sides, but hopefully it's going to be for the betterment of our educational system and for our children in the state of Wyoming for years to come. So with that, thank you very much. And this meeting is adjourned.
Good job, my friend.
You guys have done well. Yeah, you want to get paid too?